You're tuned in to the Leadership Signal. Hello there. Thank you for tuning in to the Leadership Signal, the podcast for voice actors, creative professionals, and smallish businesses. I'm your host, Rob Sogomonian. We're on episode 3 today, and we're going to start talking about kind of business theory, I guess is one thing that we can call it. And what I really kind of want to focus on today, might be a shorter episode, is the concept of showing up. Now, if you have a day job, you're not running your own business, it's very easy to show up. If you don't show up to work, you're probably not going to be working for that company for very much longer. And that concept very much extends to running your own company, or even being a good friend or a good business partner, personal partner, being a good solopreneur, being a good creative professional. Just the act of showing up kind of sets you apart from, I would say, the vast majority of people who jump into any kind of entrepreneurial endeavor. Let's talk a little bit about what that means, though, because when you first start a business, or when I first started a business, if you've tried starting your own business, I'm sure you've experienced it as well. When you first get started, everything's exciting, everything's new. You've got a lot of, you feel like you have a lot of potential. You're going to be moving forward. There's going to be a lot of growth. There's going to be a lot of things to pursue that are going to keep you engaged. And the longer you go while trying to build a business without, let's say, tangible results, or if your results aren't hitting as quickly as you think they should or they might, it becomes harder and harder to kind of show up for yourself and for your business. And the unfortunate thing is, that is just how anything that's worth pursuing kind of is. Very few people decide to start the business, and immediately find success. It's usually at least a couple of months, usually more like a couple of years, before you start seeing the fruits of your labor. And so it's very, very important to show up as the version of yourself, your best self, basically. Who do you need to be? What do you need to be? What do you need to know in order to be the person you need to be, to do the things you need to do in order to find the success that you're seeking in whatever endeavor it is? Couple of examples. Think back to when you were in school. Maybe starting a new sport in school. You've never played baseball before. You've never played soccer before, football if you're in the UK, or anywhere other than the US, I think. And you go and you try out, and maybe you make the team. But even if you're good and you're talented, there are people who have been playing that game who are seniors, right? Like, let's say you start school, you're a freshman, it's your first year in school, or we'll just say you're a first year. And here in the States, like high school, it's 4 years. So first year through fourth year, basically, a freshman through a senior. And when you first get there, even if you are very good and you've been playing, let's say you grew up playing Little League. So you were in elementary school playing for a league, you were in middle school playing for a league, you get to high school, you try out for the high school team, you're very talented, you get selected because you got the talent and you're good. You still are going to be playing with people with other students who have been doing this for, if they're seniors, they've got 3 years of experience playing in that arena for that team already under their belt, right? Probably with that coach. So a lot of people, for some reason, think that if you're going to get into business, a business endeavor of any kind, really, that it's somehow going to be different. And it really isn't. And I think that perspective kind of blindsides people. I've been in real estate for a long time. I was in construction before that. I was a software engineer before that, or I guess in tandem with that. I got into real estate as a realtor. a little bit later in life, I got into this creative endeavor of voice acting, this new podcast, episode 3. um, and I certainly don't expect that I'm going to be one of the most popular podcasts in the leadership sphere. I'm just starting. I'm 3 episodes in. I have a wealth of leadership experience behind me, which we went over in the last episode. And despite that, I can't come into this and just be like, oh, well, I'm a leadership expert, so everyone should listen to me. And if, 3 months from now I don't have 100,000 subscribers, it's a failure, and I'm gonna get out of the space. I'm gonna stop. You can't. No, you can't do that. Now, the reason I bring this up is when you get into something that's one of the most common questions that I see when I'm on Facebook or Instagram or LinkedIn is, my friends tell me, and this is in every podcast, so I'm not trying to rehash this. However, I do want to dive a little bit into the why. My friends tell me I have a great voice. My family tells me I have a great voice. I think I should become a voice actor. Or I've been acting since I was a young kid. I do a lot of theater. I am a great public speaker for my local, events or whatever. I do a lot of that. I'm going to get into voice acting because I have the presentation skills. I feel like I can hold myself in front of an audience. I don't get nervous easily. And then people get into voice acting and they say, well, it's been a couple of months and I haven't had a single job yet. I'm auditioning for everything. Why am I not getting work? And generally speaking, these are people who are talented. They definitely have a presence. Sometimes it does come down to the acting skill. Hey, you know what? You need to talk to a couple of coaches. Maybe you need to brush up on your delivery for the current time, which you're not going to know if you're just getting into the business. You're not going to have any context. It's just like starting as a freshman in high school, getting into that baseball team, getting onto that baseball team, and then feeling like maybe you're benched more than you're playing because you don't have the experience. And I think a lot of people, especially getting into a creative endeavor, feel a little bit slighted for some reason because of it. Now, real estate and voice acting, or really any kind of acting, have a little bit of a parallel in that there are people who go to school specifically for it. There are people who go to colleges or a trade school or acting conservatories for acting specifically. For real estate, it's usually a business school. Somebody went and got their MBA, and now they're getting into real estate because that's what they want to do with their MBA. And yet, if you look at somebody like a doctor, or you look at somebody like let's say, contractor, or you look at somebody who is a software engineer even, they go to school specifically for that for 4, sometimes 6 years, and then they have to start at the bottom. Almost all of them. If you look at a doctor, you go to school for 4 years. You go to a trade school, basically a specific school for the type of medicine that you're going to practice for 3 or 4 years. You go and you get accepted into a residency program where you are a trainee working under a doctor, the attending doctors, and you learn how they run their hospitals and how they run their medical practice, and you do that for 3 or 4 years. So you're talking like 12 years, let's say 10 to 12 years, just for the training to get into the industry for medicine. So, and then once you do that, very, very few people will go and just start their own practice. They'll find a job at a clinic locally or a hospital, and they'll work at that location for a bit. And then maybe they'll decide to branch off once they've kind of built up a little bit of rapport, once they've built up a little bit of confidence in that field, they'll go and start their own practice. But then they're starting again from the bottom. They have to build up their relationships in the community. People have to know they exist. People have to start showing up and going to them, and the word of mouth has to get out that they are actually trustworthy, online reviews or just people telling other people, hey, you know what? I had this, for example, podiatry. My ex-wife was a podiatrist. Hey, I have this ingrown toenail. I went to this doctor. They did a toenail removal, the corner of the toenail, so it's not ingrown anymore. Fantastic job. And funny side story, I actually had 2 ingrown toenails, both my big toes, ingrown toenails on each one, forever. And I had gone to see other podiatrists, and I had had a couple of the toenail removal procedures. My ex-wife did a toenail procedure on both of my toes. No problems ever since. She's like the best podiatrist I've ever gone to. So anyway, go to Kaiser if you want to talk to her. But the thing is, like, you don't get your doctor credentials and then just start doctoring. Like, there's a process you have to go through in order to build up the rapport for people to start coming to you, especially if you're a solo doctor or a solo medical professional of whatever it is that you're doing. Let's talk about like general contracting, another career path that I have a lot of experience with. You don't just get your contractor's license and then all of a sudden start building houses. Like, it just doesn't happen. I mean, it can. I'm sure that there are scenarios where somebody got their contractor's license and they bid for a job, they got the job, and they're building somebody's house. It happens. It's not impossible. It's not the norm. Generally speaking, you're probably going to start working even before you go and get your contractor's license, you're probably going to start working on some crew doing just menial stuff. You're going to be doing the cleanup. You're going to be doing some prep work. You're going to be doing measuring. Maybe you're the one who's doing all the cuts for the lumber or the sheetrock. And then even within contracting, you're going to have the different trades. So you're going to have electricians. You're going to have plumbers. You're going to have roofers. You're going to have people who specialize in those aspects of a home or of construction. In inspecting, same thing. You don't immediately go and get your operator's license and open up a termite company and start doing termite inspections. You don't immediately go and get your home inspector's license and start inspecting homes, which actually that wasn't even a thing for a while. I think now there are professional trade organizations for home inspection where you can get certified as a home inspector, which is awesome. But generally speaking, you would have all of your construction background behind you first. And then you would slowly build up towards being a general contractor. You would get to the point where you get your general contractor's license. You probably do that for a couple of years. Then you become a home inspector because now you have the, number one, depth of knowledge and breadth of work to understand how housing codes work, how a house should be built, what an electrical box, a fuse box should look like, what the foundation should look like, so that when you're down there crawling and you're looking around and you see that the piers are, let's say, 6 feet apart instead of 4 feet apart, you know that that's not to code. And I'm not saying that is code. I don't know what the code is in your particular area or even my particular area. I didn't do home inspections. I did termite inspections and the contracting behind that. And I know where to go and look it up. But as a home inspector, you can't be looking it up while you're there doing the inspection. You have to have a general knowledge of all this stuff, and that's built up over time. So why would it be any different with a creative endeavor? Getting into voice acting, getting into media production, getting into real estate. You can go and get your real estate license. You spend maybe, I don't know, let's say on the conservative side, $2,500. You could probably buy all the materials, take the online courses, spend money on the exam fees because it's $360. I'm probably wrong, but it's somewhere around there. Maybe it's $305. Doesn't matter. You spend that money to sign up and get your exam scheduled. You go and you take your exam and you get your license for real estate. You're not going to show up and immediately have clients. You've got to build that business. You have to build the client database, essentially, to be able to have people who you communicate with to the point where they trust you enough to sell their house or help them buy a house. So a lot of people who are getting into a creative endeavor, they go and they buy a nice microphone. They buy even if you buy a cheaper microphone, a more affordable microphone. Let's say instead of, this AT875R is a great microphone. It's very hard to tell the difference between this and say a Sennheiser 416. There's definitely a difference, and yet this will book you work. It's $168 versus an $1,100 Sennheiser. Some people will go out and buy a TLM 103. Not that I ever did that, but some people do that. And you set it up in your room, and some people don't even treat their room. So you get these super high quality mics, and they're picking up every little sound that's going on in your closet, or even if you buy a booth, they're going to pick up everything that's not right with that booth. But a lot of people spend money on the equipment before they spend money on treating the space. But I'm getting off topic here. You buy a microphone, maybe you have some acting training, maybe you don't. If you don't have any acting training, people just tell you that you have a good voice. You're competing against actors. You're competing against people who have been doing this for years. A lot of people didn't start during COVID, which was 3 years ago at this point, maybe 3.5, 4 years ago, let's say, for COVID. A lot of people got into voice acting during COVID. And a lot of people are great at narrating. They have kids. They used to read to them. They maybe get up and do presentations at work, and so they've got their notes in front of them and they can read off their notes. But a lot of people don't have or haven't had a recent experience with, how can I turn this into something that's engaging that people are going to want to listen to? And so they go into an audition or they go into a read, and they're reading it the best that they can. And it's probably great in most cases. The challenge is, you're reading against people who have been reading since the early 2000s. They've been doing this for 25 years at this point. They've got a lot of experience behind them. They've had the coaching. They've gone to group improv sessions. They've gone to group narration sessions. They've gone to conventions. They've gone to One Voice. They've gone to MAVO or WOVO or whatever the different conventions are for those. They've gone to VO Atlanta. Like, they've gone to these things. They've sat in sessions. They've learned how other actors are doing this job. Some of them have been professionally trained. They've been to Juilliard. Maybe they're a screen actor who's getting into voice acting because it's just another outlet for their creativity. So what I'm trying to say is, it's going to take you time to build up any endeavor. Whether you're getting into voice acting, whether you're getting into screen acting, whether you're getting into, I just want to do audiobooks. It's going to take you time to build up the trust, the relationships with the people who are casting that work, the relationships with the people who are producing that work. And you need to continue to show up as your best self throughout that whole process. It might take, again, some people, they'll hit it immediately, and they'll just happen to get on somebody's good side, they'll jump directly into it, and they'll take right off. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. And they will have a thriving business in their first year. More realistically, it's probably going to take a couple of years. I would consider myself a fairly decent actor. I'm going into my third year of professionally doing voice acting. Again, I started doing this back in 2003 for my YouTube videos. So I'm not new to recording audio and producing videos and acting as different characters, and that's not new to me. But I'm going up against people like Bob Bergen, who have been doing this for forever. Like, he started getting into this when he was 14, right? And he specifically wanted to be the voice of Porky Pig. But when he knew that that's what he wanted to do, he had almost like a single-minded focus on that goal. This is something that I'm fairly good at. I'm really good at reading. I'm really good at narration. And yet, it doesn't matter how good I am until a casting director or set of casting directors know who I am, have heard a couple of different performances from me, and have a project that my voice is a good fit for. Because it doesn't matter how good of an actor I am or how great of a speaker I am, if my voice doesn't fit the project, it doesn't matter. I'm wasting my time to, let's say, audition for a role where they're looking for a female character, or a role where they're looking for somebody who's got a super baritone voice. I'm not going to fit those. Doesn't matter how hard I try. And, I can lower the pitch of my voice. I can make it deeper. But even if I'm doing that, my natural timbre is like right around here. So if I am constantly lowering my voice, you'll be able to tell, especially when I get to some areas where I'm going to have a lot of higher energy. My voice is just naturally going to come back up to where it is. It's more work for me. When I lower my voice, it's just not going to sound natural, authentic. It's going to sound like I'm lowering my voice. So you got to find the right projects. You got to have the right training. You have to have enough time behind you so that people know who you are, feel like they can trust you and trust that you're going to be able to get the job done. And all of that goes into showing up. Now let's think about this from like a practical perspective. Let's say that you're somebody who feels like they're a great narrator and you audition for a book, you get the book, you narrate the book, it gets published on Audible, and it's a good book. It's getting good reviews, and then you take like a month off. Whatever, life happens, you're not able to come in and do any kind of other auditions, versus somebody who does the exact same thing, comes into this industry, auditions, gets a book, gets cast for a book, narrates the book, publishes the book, the audiobook, it goes up on Audible, and then they're consistently continuing to audition for additional books or commercials or e-learning or whatever the case may be. Let's say you come into this and you sign up for a pay-to-play. You sign up for Voice123 or Voices.com or Voice Jungle or Badalgo or any of the different platforms that you can get onto as a voice actor. If you show up once every couple of weeks and submit, let's say, 5 or 6 auditions, and then you disappear because you're not getting any traction, and then you come back another month later and you do a couple of auditions and you disappear because you're not getting any traction, a lot of the same casting directors are posting those projects to those sites. A lot of the same casting directors are, in my case, I've got an agent through TAG, the Atherton Group, Jimmy Cobble, great agent. He sends auditions out all the time, and I try, if I feel like I'm a good fit for the role, I'll audition for it. But if I were the type of actor who auditioned for like 2 or 3 things and then like a month goes by and I haven't auditioned for anything, and then I send out a couple of things, it's the same casting director sending him auditions to send out to the people on his roster that fit the role. They're going to be seeing how often you are submitting auditions. They're going to be listening to all of the different auditions all of the different styles, characters that you might have under your belt, emotions that you're conveying through your auditions and submitting. They're going to be listening to all of that. And when they keep seeing your name pop up, oh, it's Rob Sogomonian again. Oh, it's Rob Sogomonian again. Oh, it's Rob Sogomonian again. Not a good fit for this project. I don't think the client's going to like him on this one. Maybe not the best fit for this particular role. And then at some point, they're going to get a project and they're going to be like, I've heard a voice that actually would probably be perfect for this role. Who was it? Oh, right, it was Rob. Let me go and listen to a couple of his older auditions. And they'll go and they'll kind of play back a couple of things. They'll be like, that's pretty spot on. I think that would actually work. And then they'll send out the casting. And then if you audition for it and they get it in and it sounds like it's a good fit, you're going to get submitted. But you've built up that, maybe not like a personal level rapport, but they know who you are through your auditions. They've heard you. They recognize your name. And that's all about showing up. The other side of showing up is being present in the places where they are. So showing up through auditions is one thing. What if you're submitting a bunch of auditions and a casting director tends to be the one who is receiving your auditions? Maybe you're getting them through your agent. Maybe they're on one of the pay-to-plays and they're posting a couple of things and they've gotten a couple of auditions from you. Maybe they like your voice and they think you would be a good fit for a couple of things, but they have actors that they've worked with before. So maybe they've been in directed sessions with them. Maybe they have met them at conventions or conferences. Maybe they have, been more intimately involved before COVID when people would go into studios and work with people in person, before now where everybody's in a home studio. And these casting directors already have these relationships. So you might be a good fit, but they might already have somebody that they've worked with previously that they really like working with that has a similar vocal tone or range to you. It's kind of a stretch to expect them or you know, you would absolutely want them to give you a shot as the new guy or new gal. But they already know that Bob over here has been doing this for 5 years with them. He's got the same kind of tonal qualities. He's probably, I mean, they know he's going to put forth good work. He's directable. He's great with clients. Like, they're going to go for the sure thing over the new thing. In most cases, I would imagine, unless the sure thing is unavailable for whatever reason, on vacation or having a technical issue that's been going on for a couple of weeks, or then sure, now you're there. So there's a saying that I love, and it is, luck is when opportunity meets preparation. So the more you show up, the more you're preparing yourself, the more practice you're getting under your belt, the more you're showing people that you're consistent, the more you are putting yourself in front of the people who are getting the work. And then when opportunity shows up, you've got your preparation under your belt. It doesn't happen when you show up once a month or once every couple of months. You have to be consistent. And that's, I think, why people say consistency is key to success. If you treat, and that's also why they say treat it like a business. If you're going into work, you show up to work whether there's like work to do or not. And what I mean by that is there's always something to do at work. Whether it's going to be what you're specialized in or whether they just need a body to kind of help with something, there's going to be stuff for you to do when you're at work. You got to treat your voiceover business or your creative business or your, small entrepreneurship as that. One of my colleagues, actually my mentor in real estate, her name is Valerie Kroll. She's an amazing agent and a wonderful mentor. And she doesn't beat around the bush. She just is very direct, and I love her for it. She's said, and I've heard her say it a couple of times, and I think she got it from somewhere else, but I'm going to give her credit because she's awesome. Would I fire myself if I were my own employee? If I were showing up for a boss the way that I'm showing up for myself, would I get fired? or would I be like a star employee? And that's a great way, I think, to look at it because it's true. If you got into voice acting or if you got into whatever business you're in because you wanted to not have to work, well, you're not going to get paid, right? Like that's not a great way to approach things. And yet, if you're showing up every day and you're doing the things that you need to do to move the needle, specifically things to move the needle, you will find success. Eventually, opportunity will meet your preparation and things will happen. It's very, very difficult when you're in a creative industry that is almost all subjective. Yes, the relationships matter, and you could be best friends with every top name casting director in the industry. If your voice doesn't match the projects that they're casting for, you're not going to be the top choice. And it's not because you're a bad actor. It's not because you're not versatile enough. It's not because you're not showing up. You could be showing up every day and they could love you for what you're helping them do or what you're contributing to their businesses and their social posts if you're doing social media. But if you're not the right fit for the role, you're not going to get cast for that role. Opportunities will show up as long as you do. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover on this episode of the Leadership Signal. I think next week we're going to start talking about one of my favorite books in business, The Infinite Game. And the concept of showing up isn't necessarily from this book. I learned it way before I read the book, but it really is about you got to set your sights farther ahead than now. There's no winning in business. There's no end to generating business or doing business. You're always going to be moving forward, one foot in front of the other, down the path of leadership, down the path of business, and you got to think of it as an infinite game. Jocko Willink likes to say prioritize and execute. And I like to say moving the needle. And I know a lot of other people use the term moving the needle. What is the thing that you can focus on, or what are the things that you can focus on that are going to be the most impactful towards growing your business? When you're first starting out, it's probably going to be, especially if it's voice acting specific, it's going to be treating your space. If you have a bad space, bad recording space, doesn't matter what gear you get and what plugins you plug into it, you're not going to have the same quality as somebody who has a well-treated space. And today I'm actually recording with my door open, so there might be a little bit of background noise, more background noise than normal, because my usual acoustic treatment back there, which absorbs some of the noise in the room, but also prevents the noise from the outside coming in, isn't there. Now, I'm doing this on my AT875R, which is a shotgun mic, shotgun style mic. If I were doing this on my TLM103, you'd be hearing all kinds of hissing in the background because it would be picking up everything that's going on in my room. And you might have seen my dog walking around. He's got a heart issue right now, so he does these little coughs. This thing can reject some of that noise, but the TLM would not. It would absolutely pick up all of that. So the most important thing, if you're a voice actor, if you're trying to get into voice acting, is the treatment of your room. Then you can get a decent quality microphone. Doesn't have to be top of the line. Again, top of the line things tend to be almost too good for a home setup, unless you have like a specific recording booth, like a whisper room or a Studio Bricks or something like that, or a vocal booth. But the point being, don't get the equipment until you get the treatment, and work on your acting. Take classes, take seminars. I've signed up for a couple of voiceover schools. I think they're fine. I think that the time could have been better spent with a coach for more directed, more specific training, as opposed to going through a school. I think the schools are great for kind of general knowledge. And then as soon as you have that general knowledge, move on. Don't be afraid to, obviously, don't be a dick, but hey, you know what? I've gotten everything I can off of this resource. Time to put that on hold and redirect to something that's going to be more impactful. What is going to move the needle, right? So if you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a rating on Apple or Spotify and consider subscribing to the podcast in your listening app of choice. We should be on all of them. If you'd like to submit any questions or comments or suggestions, please email me at podcast@theleadershipsignal.com. And, if you submit some questions, I'm probably going to be addressing them in future episodes. And if you do submit a question, I'll very likely be reaching out to you to verify that you're okay with me discussing it. I might ask if I can use your name. If it's a good enough question, I might invite you onto the podcast to discuss, kind of talk it over with you, make it a two-person conversation as opposed to me being a talking head. But it really kind of depends on how deep that question might take us. And we do have the email address, podcast@theleadershipsignal.com. We don't have a website yet. Currently in the process of building it. So keep an eye on that space, theleadershipsignal.com. We'll have an episode list and all of that going on there at some point fairly soon, definitely before the end of the year. And yeah, we will see you again next week. This is the Leadership Signal. Tune in and amplify your voice. I'm Rob Sogomonian. Talk to you later.